Hello and welcome to Piece of Pod, a podcast brought to you by South Coast law firm Warner Goodman. I'm Sarah Whitemore. I'm an employment lawyer and senior partner in the firm with over 30 years of experience. In this podcast, I'll be having conversations with law firm partners, business owners, clients and other contacts of mine, and we'll be engaging in conversations about running businesses, career journeys, and how to excel in the world of work. So if that's of interest, why not grab yourself a cuppa, get yourself comfortable, and let's dive in. So today I'm joined by Roger Walker, CEO of Experience Hampshire. Welcome, Roger. Lovely to see you again.
Nice to be here.
We've met through networking, and so I know a fair bit about you, but I'm going to ask a few questions anyway to delve a bit deeper, if that's all right with you.
Of course.
You're always proud to say Hampshire born and bred. So can you tell us a bit about the start of your career journey? What did you do first when you left school?
Well, that's quite a long time ago now, but yes, I was born here in Hampshire, in Winchester actually, and I went to school in Winchester, so I went to primary, secondary school, and then Peter Symonds College, possibly somewhere that people listening to this podcast will know, and I came out of Peter Symonds and thought, what on earth am I going to do? A lot of my peers said they were going off to university, and I had no clue really what I wanted to do. The one thing I did love was outdoor pursuits and being outdoors. I've been an active member of the Scouts and things like that. So I ended up blagging a job at Calshot Activity Centre, which is down on the Solent, Hampshire County Council run activity centre. And I agreed to work there for nothing in order to have an opportunity to train. So they trained me up as outdoor pursuits instructor. And that led into probably 7 or 8 years of bumming around the world, shall I say, politely, and doing all sorts of things. So I worked in Australia for a year. I worked in the States for a couple of summers on summer camps, and then came back in the sort of time between and worked here in the UK running canal barges for kids and all sorts of other things. And I then got into the ski industry, ended up working for a ski company, and subsequently set up my own travel business, which ran until COVID and Brexit times, and then set up Experience Hampshire.
Goodness me, what a lot to unpack. So
Yeah.
Calshot to start with. My only experience of Calshot is having a daughter in, I think, about year 7, 8, going there for a residential in December on the south coast, and it was cold and wet, and it's a hardcore startup job, and working for free. That almost sounds like it's a breach of some employment laws.
Well, probably is these days. This was sort of 40 plus years ago, so I guess things were different then.
Yeah, we didn't have national minimum wage back then, that's for sure.
No, I was on, to be fair, I worked for my board and lodging, so although I said free, it was no money, but in return they trained me up, and I learnt to be a rifle shooting instructor, an archery coach, a kayaking instructor, a paddleboard, well, not paddleboard actually, that hadn't been invented then, but sailing instructor. So yeah,
it all sounds like a lot of fun. Did any regrets about not doing the university route?
Not at all. I think for what I've done, the path I've pursued in life, I'm very happy with what I did then. And in fact, our son at the moment is going through a sort of similar path in that he didn't really know what to do at university. And I think it's very easy just to follow the crowd, isn't it, and head off to uni and have a lot of fun, but maybe come out with a degree that's not particularly worthwhile.
And these days a lot of debt as well with it, which perhaps wouldn't have been the case back then. But lots of experience from what you're describing there, the canal boat, these all sound like things that perhaps will pop up on Experience Hampshire at some point or other. So what would you say then have been the significant milestones? So obviously getting your foot in the door to start with, perhaps, well, you tell me.
Yeah, I think definitely getting into outdoor pursuits, which was a business which, if you can call it a business, a way of life that I enjoyed, and I enjoy being with people, and the job involved teaching people, whether it was kids or adults. So I very much enjoyed that. And I think then getting subsequently into skiing, I loved skiing, and as I say, spent many years doing that. I think that the big milestone really was, unfortunately, not a particularly positive one, was the sort of COVID and Brexit, which was had a big effect on a business that I'd been running with a friend for 20 years or so, and couldn't find a way through the whole Brexit COVID issue. So, but out of that came Experience Hampshire. So here I am, and
Phoenix rising
again.
from the ashes, or whatever they describe it as. So let's just have a look at that travel sector bit first, before we will come on to Experience Hampshire, of course. So that was in the ski sector, was it? And
it started off, actually, I was working prior to that for a ski company who were based up in the Midlands, and I just, it wasn't going anywhere with the business I was working for at the time. So I decided I wanted a bit of a change, loved travel, or had learnt to love travel. So I actually set up my own travel agency, an independent travel agency. And subsequently, a guy who I'd been friends with was working for that same ski company. He then left the ski business and said, we should be using our skills to do some skiing. So I, for about 20 years or 15 years, ran an independent travel agency and a ski business alongside each other. So helping people in the summer with their summer holidays around the world, and then in the winter taking them skiing.
So you and this colleague did that together, and did you have staff and employees and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we did. For somebody who didn't plan to set up a business, I mean, people talk about entrepreneurs, and I often wonder whether an entrepreneur is somebody who sets out on a journey to be an entrepreneur. I suspect most entrepreneurs are probably more like me, who people sort of fall into things. And I set up a travel business, not really with a great plan as to, in 5 years' time, I wanted it to turn over this amount of money or employ that many people. But we were turning over about £3.5 million, taking about 3,000 people a year abroad. And we had a team both here in the UK. We had an office just outside Winchester and an office in Italy. So, yeah. And that was one of the issues with Brexit, was that employing UK staff in Italy. And we used to employ staff, for instance, who would lots of them on a gap year and wanted to come and work in a ski chalet or come and do a ski season. And that's become extremely difficult.
So taking UK staff and taking them out to Italy to work there was the issue then?
Definitely, and I don't know whether it's something you guys as a business have got involved in, but it's become a lot more challenging. Obviously, there was freedom of movement at that time, and we could employ youngsters who were between college and university. They'd come and work a ski season in a ski chalet, and it was nice and easy. It's slightly more complicated now.
Very much complicated. I mean, we as you know, we support a lot of businesses through our Peace of Mind service. One of the things that has come out through COVID has been all of the law around people working remotely abroad. Certainly when we started into COVID, people were sent home to work, and they tended to do that in the UK, and there were some issues around risk assessments and that sort of thing. And but mostly it was fairly straightforward. But then as COVID progressed, people, generally foreign employees in the UK, went back to wherever they had originated. And we then found businesses who had staff in other countries, and we had to think about tax implications and payroll implications and insurance implications and all of those sorts of things, local law, because obviously we're employment lawyers in the UK, we're not
experts
in Greek law or wherever it might be. So yes, it's been, and I think also the world sort of evolved a bit. We see quite a lot of people travelling abroad for health reasons. So they might go out to Budapest to have their teeth done, for example, or I don't know, some other country to have an operation. And then perhaps they take sick leave whilst they're out there. That's one of the challenges a lot of businesses are facing now. So it's definitely been a shift with, I would say COVID, but maybe it's more the Brexit thing, actually.
I think, unfortunately, it was a sort of perfect bad storm, wasn't it? And they collided pretty much together. And certainly the travel industry, although I'm not really in it anymore, but from what I read, it's caused lots of challenges for those people that do run travel businesses.
So as we say, that business folded, one door shut, another one opened. You took some time and then you came back and created Experience Hampshire. And in the introduction, I mentioned you're the CEO, but that doesn't stand for the normal CEO stands for. It's not the Chief Executive Officer, is it? What are you, Roger?
I'm technically, I think it says on my business card, the Chief Experience Officer. So, a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But I suppose that a little bit sums up how we run the business. It's hopefully we don't take ourselves too seriously, and it's all about fun and enjoyment and things.
It sounds ever so Willy Wonka to me, this sort of notion of a chief experience officer. I feel like you've got Oompa Loompas and boats going down chocolate rivers and goodness knows what else. But how did you come across, or how did you decide to go for Experience Hampshire as a concept?
I guess after the travel business was no more, I wanted something to do. I do have peers in the village where I live who've sort of hung up their working boots, as it were, and spend their life on the golf course. And A, I don't play golf, and B, I think I'd be bored pretty soon. And I just felt that I still had the inspiration and enthusiasm to do something else. So we spent a good few months sort of brainstorming ideas, and I chatted to a friend of mine who I co-run the business with, a chap called David Collinson, who's a good friend and a kind of business mentor a little bit. He worked in the city for a while, or quite a few years actually, and I came up with the concept of Experience Hampshire. We chatted it through and said, let's give it a go.
And so if you met someone in a darkened corner who'd never heard of Experience Hampshire, how would you describe it? What is Experience Hampshire?
The dreaded elevator pitch, I think. I think really we're a website or a portal full of fun, interesting, unusual things to do in Hampshire. Kind of what it says on the tin, really, Experience Hampshire. So we've brought together workshops, experiences, activities, some of which are already operating or were already operating in the county. We've bought them, we've given them a digital shop window, I guess, to sell some more of what they were already doing. But also we're now working harder to curate some of our own experiences and work with some of our partners, as we call them, so the suppliers effectively, and I guess inspire them to use their skills, their expertise to do other things that they might not have thought of, and bring them some extra income without costing them lots of money, really.
And all of these experiences, it does what it says on the tin, these are all in Hampshire. So they're, for those who are living in Hampshire, it's local activities, keeping the market local. There are obviously lots of, I don't know about lots, but there are other experience type websites you can go on, and you might Google puppy yoga or something, and you go on, and the closest one is in Bristol, and you're living in Portsmouth, or you've got a trip up to Newcastle to fly, whatever it might be. Is Hampshire, is it important because that's where you're from, or is it important because it's keeping things local and there's a sort of green element to it? I
think for lots of reasons, you're right that there are businesses already moving in this sphere, and some of them, happy to mention, like Red Letter Days, have been around for 30 or 40 years. My view, and you touched on it a bit, was that, well, A, they haven't evolved particularly well, so they still offer hot air balloon flights, spa days, track days, and they've been offering those for as long as they've been in business. But I think the key thing is they're business model is one that's crosses all over the UK and quite often now into Europe and further abroad. So they have the experiences they offer are not local quite often to you. If you live in London, then you're very well served because they have lots of experiences and workshops in London. But you're right, and if you go to some of these big brand websites and put in Hampshire and say, what can I do? You might come up with 20 experiences. We have 240 experiences. So I think our skill set is knowing Hampshire particularly well and offering experiences that are here in the county. But as you say, that's good from a green potential as well. People are not having to travel miles to do these things.
And you have the sort of traditional things. You have things like chocolate making classes, which could be generic. They could be done anywhere, couldn't they? Possibly. But you also have things that are very specific to the local area, such as the Vaults tour in Southampton or the walking tours in Winchester and in Portsmouth, where people perhaps don't realise quite what's on their doorstep. And is it part of your ambition to open up the doorsteps to people to see what's just outside?
It's been an interesting journey. When you set up a business, as those people listening will know, you quite often have a vision kind of where you want to go. But I think my view is you need to be flexible and react a bit to the market. And my view when I set this up was that we'd get a lot more business from visitors who were visiting Hampshire as opposed to living here. And in reality, probably 90% plus of our bookings come from people who do live locally. And as you say, a lot of those people I think are inspired by what we do because they're discovering, or we're discovering for them, things that they can do on their doorstep. And the Vault tours in Southampton, where we explore hidden, in inverted commas, medieval vaults, which are right under the high street in Southampton, and people who've lived here all their lives come on the tours and have never even heard about the vaults, let alone been down into them. So yes, it's fun to be able to offer an opportunity for local people to explore their surroundings.
And you have also linked up with or partnered with some hotels and so on. So you do still offer that experience to people through their sort of almost like a concierge service, where they're able as hotels to say, oh, if you want to do this, then we can put you in touch and do that. So there is that market as well for you. Definitely,
and it's not one we've said we're not interested in chatting to these people about. We'd love to engage with hotel concierge, and we do believe that we probably have some extra skill and expertise and a little black book of contacts here in Hampshire that possibly some of the concierge people working in concierge don't have, because they might have come down from London or have lived abroad previously and suddenly end up in Hampshire being asked questions about things to do locally, and they just don't have the skill set that we perhaps have. So we're very happy to do vineyard tours or trips out on the Solent or whatever historical tours for people who are visiting the area.
And you do these as options on your website that have already been set up, but also you'll do them as bespoke events or days for, I don't know, a business team building activity or something of that sort. It's as broad as it's long.
Definitely. And you're right. We have, as I think I said just now, 240 different experiences on our website at the moment, which are there ready to book. And you can go on now, click a button, pay, and that's you off on a microlight adventure or walking alpacas. But if your requirement is a bit more bespoke and you run a local business and are looking to take your team out for a day, then we're very happy to chat to you about curating a bespoke day or half day or experience for your team, for sure.
So 240 experiences ready to go. You're the Chief Experience Officer. How many of those experiences have you experienced?
Not all 240, I will say, but we work hard to. There's myself and a small team, and we do work hard to go out and trial these experiences. Everything is sort of hand-picked, as it were. So even if we haven't been on the experiences, we've chatted and engaged with the partners, as we call them, the suppliers. And I guess, again, coming back to the big national companies that are moving in this space, they tend to you'll get an email if you're a supplier. Do you want to sign up for our website? You agree the terms, and that's it. Whereas we'll work a lot harder to try and understand people's businesses. And there are occasionally businesses that we just don't think will sell on our site or aren't quite a perfect fit for what we do. So yeah, I would say that all our experiences are hand chosen, carefully selected.
So is this an easy or difficult question to answer? Which is your favourite? Or is that like somebody asking me which is my favourite daughter?
Yes, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I just think they're all so different. It depends what mood you're in. It's a bit like, I suppose, what's your favourite drink? It depends where you are and what the occasion is. I think some of our simple experiences, so a guided tour of Winchester Cathedral tower and roof. So I live in Winchester. I've been in the cathedral hundreds of times, but to actually go up the tower into the roof, walk along the top of the nave, look out over Winchester, and we charge £15 for that experience.
And you do that as the sun goes down at twilight as well, don't you?
You can do that. That's that's an amazing, cool thing to do. But I've also been lucky enough to go out on the luxury motorboat that we use going out of Old Portsmouth. Takes you over to the Hut, which is a restaurant on the Isle of Wight, which some people will know. Clearly the other end of the price range, but an amazing day out, especially if you're with a group of friends. A perfect 60th birthday celebration with 9 friends to go and do that for the day.
And I think if you've got people who are, shall we say, challenging when it comes to birthday present options, there are some really interesting things that you can do, that you give an experience. And these days, I think a lot of people are looking for memories to retain with each other rather than things. But I think the next generations coming through are not really things people, are they? They much prefer to have time spent with somebody. And there are lots of different things that you can do that are on your site.
I agree with you. I think we're probably of the generation where we bought more stuff to put on our mantelpiece or fill our house up with. And I think definitely the younger generation are more about spending quality time with friends and family. So yeah, you're right. All our experiences are available to purchase as gifts. And in fact, we're just upgrading our gift voucher offering to enable people to give something physical. At the moment, it's a digital voucher, but we're looking to actually create a nice box with a voucher and
a physical thing.
Yeah, which is slightly weird because we're talking about not giving physical things. But yes, so you can buy a voucher either for a specific experience, so a walking tour or a pottery class, or you can give a voucher, a generic Experience Hampshire voucher for any value, and then the lucky recipient can sit there on our website and decide whether they want to do jam making or go on a mosaic class or a foraging workshop.
And I think that's really interesting from a sort of business perspective, because we give people rewards. So if somebody refers a peace of mind client to us and they sign up, we will send that person a thank you. I think that's only polite. But reflecting on what we do, I think we are highly discriminatory because we tend to send women flowers. Thank you for referring in this business. Here's a bunch of flowers. And we tend to send men a bottle of something.
Yeah.
Whereas I like the idea of sending them an experience voucher because, well, first of all, it's not discriminatory. And as an employment lawyer, I shouldn't be. But secondly, it's a sort of more flexible, neutral kind of reward that they can then pick something that works for them. You know, you may be sending a bottle of alcohol to somebody who doesn't drink, and what's that going to make them feel like? So I like the idea of those vouchers from a business perspective.
I think they work well, and we're starting, our business is still only a couple of years old, so we're still sort of looking at opportunities. But I've had some conversations, including with you, about employee rewards and staff rewards. And I think our vouchers would work very well in that space. And I think they tick as well the whole sort of ESG box, you know, rather than... I don't know, I hate to mention the gift card vouchers beginning with A that we all give away, and I'm not sure that any of us should be buying those vouchers really and clearly I'd love everyone to buy Experience Hampshire vouchers, but I think businesses should be looking, you know, even more closely, as you say, at and it's very nice to be giving gifts to staff, but maybe rather than a bottle of French champagne, you should be giving a bottle of Hampshire fizz. You know, we've got 16, 17 vineyards here in Hampshire. So rather than giving a bottle of Moet, which you got from Tesco's, might take a little bit more effort, but to find a shop that sells Hampshire fizz and giving that as a gift if you want to give fizz. But as you say, do you know that the person you're giving it to, whether it's a colleague or maybe a customer that you're saying thank you to, do you know that they drink? Do you know they like fizz? Or so yeah, I think I agree totally with you.
When you're thinking about when you're thinking about your green credentials and so on as a business as well, thinking about, you know, rewarding your staff with something that stays local, that's got to be right up there as one of the real ways of impacting the environment. So that should be something, if businesses have that as one of their priorities, that they should be giving some thought to.
I think so. And we do say that lots of our experiences, I think, sort of tick the mindfulness box as well. So it's not, again, going back to the big brands moving in our sphere and who offer track days and things. I think driving a racing car around Thruxton for half an hour and burning up X gallons of fuel is probably not a particularly PC thing to do. It might be a fun experience. But we offer things like forest bathing and yoga and, as mentioned, pottery classes, but we run a pottery class which is all, you don't even use a potter's wheel, so you go out and you'll find things in the wild things locally which you then mould into your pottery creation, and then that's fired for you, and you actually, at the end of your experience, you come back 3 or 4 weeks later and you have something that you've created using your hands that you've spent 2 hours.
And then you give that as your gift to your dad.
Possibly.
Dare I say, he's the most difficult person for me to buy for.
Of course.
And you're foraging. I've always thought that as being going out into the countryside, up and down the hedgerows, but you do that in the cities as well. I saw you've got one Winchester foraging.
We have, yes. We're just so Winchester has a food festival in the summer in its second year, and as part of Winchester Food Week, leading up to that festival, we're running. Actually, it'll be a first for us, our first urban foraging experience. And we went out and tested it last week, and within, half a mile, not even half a mile of walking around Winchester, we found, with our expert forager as our guide, we found a wealth of different things. She had me eating ground elder and wild strawberries and plantain, all these things that many of us would say are weeds, which grow on the verges. So.
And you weren't just walking up and down your neighbour's allotment, were you?
Definitely not on this occasion.
So I can see a role for those experiences. You're talking about mindfulness things and things that are good for well-being and mental health. Lots and lots of our clients are concerned about mental health. I would say when we're advising employment law advice for clients, 90% of our calls, I'm guessing, of course, are about employees who have got concerns with their mental health. It's about absence from work through mental health and so on. So I can see the benefit of these sorts of experiences from improving the well-being and the the health being, if you like, of people's workplaces generally. So I could see your vouchers impacting on that as well, if that again is a priority for businesses.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win really, and there are a lot of experiences that we feature on our site which are low carbon. Obviously, you've got to get there quite often to do the experience, but as you said, they're all here in Hampshire, so you're not using air miles and things to get there. And yeah, a chance to sit in a wood-fired sauna overlooking the sea, which I did a few weeks ago down at Southsea, and then unfortunately it must have been more than a few weeks ago because it was jolly cold, and then running into the sea, much to the delight of everyone walking along the seafront in their coats and scarves. But the opportunity to do that and just, I don't know, escape from the rat race and do that sort of thing has to be good, I think.
And so what's the business model here? Because you're, as you say, you're curating experiences. You're not actually delivering all of these experiences. You don't employ a whole army of people who do these things, do you? What's your business model?
So it's a commission model, basically. So the partners who are on the site agree when they sign up to pay us a commission for every experience that we sell. So it's a payment by results. It's really a marketing fee, and I guess essentially that's what we are, is a marketing platform. I like to think we're a little bit more than that, but yeah. So in this sort of world, you either work on a commission basis or a subscription basis. So the other way is to build a website that has lots of traffic and then charge people to be on the site. But we felt it was fairer for us to be paid on by results, really.
Yeah. And so a lot of these people are micro businesses themselves, are they? The people who are actually running the experiences?
We have a whole range. Predominantly, they are micro businesses. Some are one-man lady bands, as it were. Some have a few employees. And we do work with some big businesses. So we work with Hampshire Cultural Trust, for instance, who run all the museums now in the county. We work with Winchester Cathedral. We work with the Mary Rose Trust. We work with Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. So we do work with big businesses, but generally it's the smaller businesses.
So when you're looking back over your career so far, you've got lots of different business model experiences. I mean, you've been employed at the start, even if you weren't paid. You've been employed, you've employed people. Now you've got these sort of partnerships with other businesses, and I guess your own business is a sort of micro business in that you don't have everything really that happens on Experience Hampshire stands or falls with you. If you want some social media done, it stands or falls with you. If you want to promote it in a networking event, it's you, and so on. So what lessons have you learned from each of those different types that perhaps might influence how you've delivered the others?
I think people are generally fall into the two categories, and some people like the security of being employed. And as I said earlier, I don't think I set out to be a business owner, but I think if you at any point in life feel that you might like to set up a business, then certainly my advice going from what I've learned would be to give it a try. And I think especially now where life is very flexible and we're again of an era where perhaps people got into a job and followed that job, did it for 40 years. And I think the youngsters have so many opportunities now. So I think I definitely believe that if you feel that you would like to set up a business, then give it a go. And if it doesn't work, well, you go back to being employed again. But I love the flexibility and the ability to be your own boss. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but I'm not sure I could go back to working for somebody who was breathing down my neck saying, do this, do that. So.
What about going back to being the person who's doing the breathing down the necks, and you had staff in the travel agency business? Would you go
Yeah,
back?
I have a small team now of I suppose consultants who work for me on an ad hoc basis, and I don't particularly see them as employees or consultants who are working for me. I think I try and treat people as an equal, and again, I know that's a bit of a cliche, but it's about, I think a team works well where everybody just is much more on a level. I'm not big into hierarchy and things, and I know that gets difficult as you build a business and you end up the business being slightly hierarchical, and that you occasionally have to make decisions that you don't feel perhaps happy making. I've had to lay people off because they weren't good at their job, and that's no fun. I guess nobody really enjoys that, but perhaps some people, for some people it's easier than for others, and I didn't find that particularly easy. I just hoped, I was of the view that I hoped everybody would work as hard as I did, and we'd all just rub along and get a good job done. But as you well know, because that's the world that you're in, that's not the way that a lot of businesses do work.
And it can be frustrating. Your expectations of your own standards aren't necessarily the same that you experience from other people. So you do get to that point where you think, well, I'm doing this, I'm delivering this, why aren't you doing this and delivering this? And I think the issue with laying people off, no, it's not a comfortable conversation. And the reality is it happens infrequently. So for most people, you're not regularly doing it, and so therefore it's not something that you go into and think, well, I know how to do this. And obviously where we come in terms of our peace of mind service is supporting businesses to do that, and we deal with these things regularly. It becomes something that we're able to script for people and help and so on, but it's not the most positive side of having employees. The other thing I think is interesting is we were talking earlier today, so we run masterclasses on different topics. And we've got one coming up about atypical contracts. Now, if I go back to when I started out as an employment lawyer, 30 whatever it is years ago, people worked full-time in a workplace on a permanent contract doing regular hours. Now we've got hybrid workers, home workers, we've got part-time workers, irregular hours, we've got fixed-term, 0 hours workers, people on all sorts of stuff. There's all sorts of things going on. And so it sounds as though you and the people that you work with at Experience Hampshire have found some sort of model that works for you and gives all of you that sort of flexibility. And I actually think COVID has accelerated all of that, it's freed up businesses to permit that to happen, and therefore there's been more of it happening, and obviously we've had changes in flexible working, etc. that's also fueled it. But it sounds as though you've found some interesting ways of working together.
Yes, and I think sometimes people having other work outside of the work that they're doing for me. Jane, one of my colleagues who I work closely with, who I've had a meeting with this morning, she's chair of the parish council, so she was heading off this afternoon to chair the AGM of the parish council. But I think that brings other ways of looking at things into our business as well, and Jane's done lots of jobs over the years, so it's, I think all this thing helps bring everything into the mix and probably empowers us all to think a bit more broadly. And
So Experience Hampshire today, experience the world tomorrow, or what's the, or just more experience of Hampshire, experience more of Hampshire?
We're still at a stage, I think, where we're proving concepts. So we're getting very close to working out what sells and what doesn't. And much as we love some experiences, as I alluded to earlier, some sell better than others. And unfortunately, we are a business, so we have to look at not just what's lovely and fluffy and we like a lot. We have to look at what sells and what perhaps doesn't sell as well. So it's a proof of concept really here in Hampshire. And then the potential, Experience Hampshire is actually a trading name of Experience Group Limited. So there's a potential possibly to do Experience Dorset or Experience Wiltshire. But I think there's a lot more to be done here in Hampshire, to be honest. And as you well know, because we network together, I'm always out and about looking for new opportunities, and I'm still discovering new things to do here in Hampshire. So there's still lots to be done here in Hampshire, definitely, as a start.
There's certainly lots to explore. I've done your smartphone camera workshop. I gifted that as a present for somebody, and then jumped on board and did the experience as well. That was really interesting. Is there one experience that you think everybody should experience in their lifetime?
No, I don't think there's one particular. I think the historical tours, which we've talked about already during this podcast, are great, because I think so often we live in towns and cities, or close to towns and cities, and don't really understand the history, or not fully understand the history of these places. So I think those are a very low cost opportunity to learn more about where we all live, really.
And just in case there is anybody who's just crawled out from under a rock, where can they find Experience Hampshire?
Well, they just Google Experience Hampshire is the best way. The website's actually experiencehampshire.uk, but if you Google us, you'll find us there at the top of your search engine.
Any final words of wisdom, encouragement, top tips for our audience at all?
I think enjoy what you do, and I'm lucky to have had a life of doing all sorts of things, jobs around the world. But I think the thread through them all is I've enjoyed what I'm doing. You could argue that there's been an element of luck, but I think we all sort of orchestrate the way our lives are going to be, and I think there's so much fun stuff out there. And especially for the youngsters coming through, I mean, there are massive opportunities. I was reading an article the other day that 50% of the jobs the kids at school are going to do haven't even been invented. So, you know, the world's their oyster. So, well, yeah.
Think of all the social media assistants that we've got that we wouldn't have had 10 years ago, all the chat GPT experts, all those different things that are coming through.
No, who knows where AI is going to take us? But I think the good thing about my business is, or our business, is that hopefully experiences and doing things will actually, as we get more time, which allegedly AI is going to give us more time, there will be even more of a demand to go forest bathing or jam making or gin making. Or
do you think AI is going to give us that more time? I look back to my first week in Warner Goodman. There was so much excitement because the secretaries had got these new typewriters where they had little screens and you could type a whole sentence before it went to the page, you know. And obviously, you know, in those 30 years since then till now, you know, we've got desktop computers, we've got tablets, we've got whatever. You know, you can now tell a client instantly how much they owe you or how much you owe them, perhaps, you know, all those sorts of things. And that was all these technological advances were going to give us more time. But actually, I think a lot of our staff would say, well, actually, we're overwhelmed. We've got less time because there's more stuff we're having to deal with. I don't know if AI is going to be continuing in that vein or really freeing us up. What are your thoughts?
I really don't know, and I'd love to know more about AI. I think it's all a bit sort of smoke and mirrors at the moment, and it would be nice to. I think we were talking about this recently at networking, to have the opportunity to listen to some people who really did know about AI, although how much they know about it, I don't know. But it's hey. I'm lucky in that I don't have another 70 years of working life, so I think by then the world will have changed massively, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. So I do use AI now and again just to create content or start to create content, but
for me, change is what makes life fun, isn't it? You know, the fact that we don't do things the way we did 30 years ago means that I'm in a more exciting, different place. So if I was doing something very routine that was the same for the last 30 years, I think by now I might have gone stir crazy. So it's back to that mindfulness and well-being, I'm sure. So I'll give it a go. We'll see what happens.
And me.
So, final thing on our podcast every session is we have an audience source question. So here is your audience source question, Roger.
Right,
open it up and let's have a look.
Right. Do I need to put my glasses on at this point? So if you could give the 18-year-old you any piece of advice, what would that be? Oh, this is always a challenge, isn't it, this one? I find it difficult because I've done so many different things over the years. I'm not sure that there's one single piece of advice that sort of made me who I am. I think it's a combination of all the different stuff. So I think probably is don't pigeonhole yourself into a particular thing. A particular way of life. I think be open to opportunities, and I'm not a massive risk taker, but I think if opportunities arise that err on the side of maybe taking a risk, then take that risk and see where that opportunity takes you. And as we've said earlier, if that opportunity doesn't take you down a path you want to be going down, then just head back to the main path again and try something else. So,
and do you think 18-year-old Roger would be surprised by some of the experiences you've had?
I don't know. That's almost over. I'm not sure 18-year-old Roger thought that much about what the future held. I just, again, saying what we've discussed before about some people, I think have a real life vision of what they want to do, which is fine, and I've never had that. And if Experience Hampshire, let's say tomorrow someone came along and said, I'll give you £5 million for Experience Hampshire and you're free to do something else, I guess I'd be upset because there's a lot to do with Experience Hampshire, but I'd probably take the 5 million and I'd relish the opportunity to reinvent myself yet again. And I potentially have another business. I don't know what it is, so don't ask me what I'd do if I wasn't doing this. But I think I'd relish the opportunity of heading out on life's journey again to see what else I might be able to do.
So if that does happen, Roger, and you get the 5 million, will you come back on the podcast and tell us what you did with it?
That'll be a good story for the podcast.
Wouldn't it just?
But I suspect that probably won't happen. But
well, good luck. I hope it does. I'd like to hear all about it. But even if it doesn't, let's continue the dialogue about Experience Hampshire, because I've enjoyed chatting to you today and I'm sure our audience will have enjoyed it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. I hope you found it insightful and empowering. To stay connected, why not hit the subscribe button? Or if you think your friends might be interested, why not rate us as a 5? To be first to know about upcoming episodes, follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram and LinkedIn, where you'll find us at Warner Goodman LLP, or follow us on YouTube, where our episodes are at Piece of Pod. Thank you again. Until next time.